So on this recording of The Ant, episode 21, I had a conversation with my girlfriend, and I just wanted to talk to her about some things that have been in the news, and have bounce some ideas off her, have a nice conversation. And that's what we did. Talked about Latin American issues, the growing targeting by the Trump administration against Venezuela, against now Colombia, which you could see it coming, and obviously still against Cuba. And I will be talking more about this soon on the podcast. I think my next episode will also include some mention of this, but I decided to add a lot of links and sources in the show notes this time, for different things that I mentioned throughout the conversation, just to keep it sourced, keep myself honest, and so that's what we talk about. And we talk a little bit about the new NSPM 7 executive directive that Trump passed now about like 2 weeks ago. We had this conversation about, let's say, October 21st-ish. So, hope you enjoy, it's our dynamic. It was late at night, we had taken a gummy too, so, we're it's just us, so this is not the most straight-laced episode that I've ever done, but this is worth the post. So if you think so, check the Anthropographer out on Substack, YouTube, and yeah. So here we go. There's a lot of developments right now that are happening that are going to affect Latin America. Latin America is changing just like the rest of the world is changing rapidly. But, big things are happening. And it is scary, but it's also, it can go either way. So the other week I listened to Gustavo Petro at the UN giving a speech on basically an anti-imperialist speech, anti-genocide, pro-life, pro-humanity, anti-capitalist, calling out the imperial stranglehold of the world that the US is trying to maintain, and other fascist governments, and yeah. I'm not putting words into his mouth that he didn't say. He called it out, and this is something kind of.
Yeah, I remember some of the clips from the
speech. It's not something that everybody does. It's not.
He was very brave to do to the UN.
He was kind of brave to do it. Trump took away his visa. He can't go to the U.S. anymore, and he's gonna have trouble going to any U.S. friend states, because of that.
Well, he said what he had to say.
He said what he should have said, and what every leader in the world should be saying. But I think the reason why Gustavo Petro felt that he had to say this at this moment, and he's in the last year of his term, so he almost has a little liberty to say something like this, but also it comes with consequences, and it's not like he or his socialist movement in Colombia doesn't want to win again. They're trying to grow the socialist project in Colombia, not let it fall apart. But a month ago our country bombed people in the waters of Venezuela. Mm-hmm. Because they could. Just because they could, they did it. And what they say is that they were narcotraficantes, that they were here, they were on their way to bring drugs to our country.
Mm-hmm.
And that justifies eliminating them from this world.
Was anybody hurt?
Yes, of course. The people on board were killed, wiped off the face of the earth.
Oh my god!
A missile was hit a boat, and this it wasn't just one time. Now it's been multiple times, week after week. They've been doing this to different boats, and this week that passed, they did it, and there was known Colombians on board now. So it wasn't just Venezuelans. Now it's Colombians, and so Petro has been even more out saying, "You're trying to start a war. You're killing our people. You're trying to start a war." Everybody should be calling this out. This man wants to. This is not just one man. It's not just a Trump problem. This is a countrywide, multi-countrywide fascist bloc forming, and is the modern Monroe Doctrine 2.0 that I've been talking about for a while.
Yeah.
And they think that, okay, because it's expensive and it's hard to maintain imperialism abroad in Europe and other continents, that it might be easier to just get our resources and rape over here. But war is never prosperous for anybody, okay? It's only prosperous for the people that are going to be commanding the destruction, the people who get to sit in the offices and command it from afar. But the people of our country that are going to have to fight it and lose their life, the people of their countries that are going to have to fight it and defend themselves and lose their lives, and it's going to destabilize. It aims to destabilize a region so that it's easier to plunder. Is a tried and true method. And so it's very concerning. It's very concerning because they're using war on drugs vocabulary. They're using war on terrorism vocabulary. They're linking it together. They're using it with and now they're exploiting the misinformation that they use to link it all together and conflate Venezuelans and the Maduro government with a dictator that needs to be toppled, and he's the head of a cartel ring, and we would be saving the Venezuelans if we committed a war against them and killed them in open waters.
So Gustavo Petro, well, because recently they've involved Colombian ships too, is why he
was saying it even before Colombians were getting killed. He was saying
he wants to start a war with just Venezuelans.
It's not as simple as they just want to start a war with Venezuela. Yeah, they would
destabilize the country.
They're using Venezuela as an in to start a war against Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, Colombia, all these countries that dare to control their own resources, dare to experiment with different political systems, dare to not be a slave to the US dollar, and to give multinational US companies fair game to plunder their resources and make bank off of them.
Yeah.
So that's what the war is about. But they say it's a war on terrorism. It's a war on drugs.
Yeah, and the poor suckers believe them.
And a lot of people believe them.
Well, a lot of people, this is like something that they're, because of
it's playing on old propaganda.
Oh, I was gonna say, because of propaganda, a lot of people believe, or it's a real fear for a lot of people.
Sure.
In their minds.
Because people do have a sense of what drugs do to this country. A lot of people are on drugs themselves. A lot of people see violence, or at least see violence on TV, and think that, like, yeah, this is a problem for our society and we should get rid of it.
Yeah.
But the only methods that are ever presented as, possible solutions are contribute to these problems getting bigger in reality. We could and should talk about that, but that's something Petro brought up. The biggest narco traficantes in the world are based in Miami in the U.S. The reason why drugs are coming into the U.S. country is not because Colombians and Mexicans are forcing them into the country. Is because people in this country are bringing them in and asking for them and using them. So to say that it's Mexico's fault or Colombia's fault for poisoning us, and it erases a whole history too. It erases facts on the ground. The fact that the DEA and the CIA have been proven to be profiting off of cartels and introducing distribution lines, and this is well documented. It's very well documented.
Where can somebody find this information?
Let's continue, but I'll put in some sources because that's a very good question.
Yeah.
I mean, the news channel because I was just watching a video on that today.
Yeah, I forget, and you just said that earlier.
La Base, America Latina.
La Base América Latina.
The video called Narcos Gringos, todo lo que no se cuenta sobre carteles de EEUU. Okay?
EEUU.
And they do a really good job in this video of detailing the fact that the biggest narco traffickers and the biggest drug lords in the world are based in the U.S. and that there's big money making cartel active in our borders. And they launder money in the biggest banks of the world, the most established banks in the world, and they're big high rollers, and they get to operate pretty loosely and with a lot of cover with the laws of our land. Now, some people get caught and some people go to jail, but they are not made examples of in the way that outside drug traffickers and outside contrabandists are made examples of.
Well, they're seen as like pawns of the
cartels,
of the foreign game.
Exactly. That's a good point.
Yeah. Okay, so he called out the administration as trying to start a war to get what they want.
And it's just scary, and it's concerning because we do have the biggest army in the world. We do have the most weapons and the most power.
Mm-hmm.
The most ruthless sort of people, warmongers on earth.
Big figureheads there.
That are willing to do these types of things. So, I hope that, everybody, tries to see it in the right light. I mean, that's why, U.S. politics, as an American, I think it's something very important that we follow our politics. But it has a big effect on the world as well. If people here rose up and protested and forced the change of you guys might say our leaders or our government might say that you want a war. We're not having it. We're not doing any war. Nobody is gonna enlist. Nobody's gonna do this. Nobody's gonna do that. We're not gonna fund it. We're gonna economically fight against it. We're gonna politically fight against it. We're gonna, we're not going down that road. No more war.
Well, a lot of people have. There are a lot of people that have a lot of. They're quite patriotic, and so they really like the idea of fighting for their country.
Sure, but you know, a moral fight is if you're defending yourself, you know, fight back. But to start a fight on false grounds is just something that really nobody should get behind. And I get why some people fall into the trap of getting behind it and becoming a part of the army that does all of these sort of interventionist missions.
Yeah.
They pay good. A lot of people who join the military are not in the best of situations economically, and the army offers an opportunity to make a decent wage and with benefits, and to set you up with a low interest loan and all these different types of things. Army is very attractive in different ways.
Yeah.
But
It sort of like helps you be like, I guess, like a super citizen. You get promoted up to super citizen. Then you get all of these citizens' perks.
well, they try to make it seem that
But
way.
there's a lot of downsides.
There's a lot of downsides as well, and that's also well documented. Go ahead and let's say a few. I mean, because you have some experience, you can say it from different angles. Of like, I'm not saying that you have military experience. I'm just saying that you've tackled it from different angles and you've seen it from different angles.
It seems like it's something that leaves you with a lot of emotional trauma at the end. That's hard to deal with. And that emotional trauma, you know, kind of changes your worldview and your mentality very easily. I don't know. It's sort of like if you join a cult and then you leave. It's a very traumatic, can be a traumatic experience that, you know, completely alters the way that you would have been if you never even got into the cult in the first place, you know.
And what is, because we both have had people in our family that have been in the army, you know.
Yeah.
So you're saying from that type of viewpoint, what you've seen, that's kind of what you've seen.
I think that's like a general summation.
Yeah, that's a general summation.
I mean, you do get some benefits that help you, you know, living in society. You know, you get your
GI
education paid for.
GI Bill.
These are all things that cause, you know, crippling debt to a lot of Americans.
Exactly.
So really what they do for the military people is what they should be doing for everybody, you know?
Sure, exactly. It's almost like you're little worth more than if you're willing to, you know, go kill for and die for the mission of the administration. Because it's not the mission of the country. It's the mission of the powerful decision makers in the country. And we don't set that agenda. It's proven in the polls. We don't set that agenda. Most people in this country are anti-war. And yet we are in never-ending wars. Never-ending wars. And most people in the country don't want to fight wars.
Well, how does that happen?
Because we don't live in a democracy. The powerful have a lot of sway. The money interests have a lot of sway.
Yeah.
So that's why, you know, as a global community, as people who hear somebody like Gustavo Petro, we gotta applaud that. We gotta support that. We gotta further that, because there really should be no war. And also, he calls out the other atrocities that the fascists are committing as well.
In the U.S.?
Yeah, the immigrant concentration camps.
Oh, yeah.
Deportation, inhumane deportations of immigrants. the crackdown, the different things that are happening. And, you know, our country, you know, the leaders in our country, there's not a lot of hope in there.
For the leaders?
Yeah, for change, you know, stemming from the leaders, you know.
Yeah.
What do you think about, what are your associations with Latin America? And because you're also Latino, you know, I'm not the only Latino talking right here, you know.
Yeah. You mean what about their plight? But the plight is
Not so much the plight, just the life and perspective, and as you know, we grew up more American than, or North American than.
I mean, I think that it's
Or
major.
English American.
I think that it's majorly apart from, let's say, socialist countries, that more socialist leaning governed countries. I mean, it's like this conception that living in America is really, really great. The best, like, sort of country that you could live in. That propaganda is still perpetuated throughout Latin America, I feel like.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, your Spanish teacher even said as much, no? That she used to think that too.
Yeah, she did say that.
But I think it's a lot of people that think that. I mean, same sort of people that are very complacent with their political knowledge here, you know, are also buy into American dream.
Yeah, American exceptionalism.
American
too.
exceptionalism. And so then people from other countries who are not so politically knowledgeable, like about what's going on there in their local politics or their national politics, and they think they buy into American exceptionalism too.
It happens, yes.
I think it happens a lot more than you think. I'm saying for countries that are not very socialist leaning.
No, I know.
I mean that's why, you know.
Even the socialist leaning ones, there's American propaganda in there too.
That's why immigration is so high. Because that propaganda is still being perpetuated. You know, people must be believing it to come all the way over here, across the Pacific, across the Atlantic.
Of course. You know, and you know, to give them credit too, you know, sometimes it's not just that, you know, there might be propaganda in it as well, but sometimes there's bad situations, and this is a better situation and people take it.
Sure, yeah, like if you're a refugee.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But it's something that my Spanish teacher, she did say, not really a teacher, more like a coach, maybe like a coach, Spanish
Maybe
coach.
like a coach, yeah.
Spanish coach. And we had a good conversation today because I brought up something similar to that. And then she said something to the tune of like, well, you know, U.S. people tend to have this perception, and the outside world tends to have this perception of Latin America that we are kind of down bad, you know, like kind of suffering, and
just because it's different.
And then, you know, and then that's kind of like the stereotype of a Latino, that, you know, they're poorer, and so there's this stereotype, you know. You know, it's
wait, this what stereotype?
That when people think of South Americans, just like when people think of Africans, you know, they're like, oh, third world countries, down bad economically, suffering.
Like, I mean, it's just really comparing apples to oranges, you know. It's well, there are people suffering. That's not to negate. There are definitely people suffering, you know. But there are people who their way of life has not necessarily been completely trampled by, you know, American capitalist interests. Like, we might say the same thing. Like, sometimes I see, for example, on YouTube, videos of Africans that live in very rural communities.
Mm-hmm.
And so their houses are much smaller and made of natural material. And they just have a different life, you know. They don't go to like the convenience store or supermarket necessarily, you know.
Yeah.
In the way that we do. You know, and they...
It's just a very blanket. It's a very blanket statement, you know.
What?
The stereotypes. Believing in the stereotype, you know.
What stereotype?
Of like just, you know, suffering as compared to us in modernity and civilization.
Yeah, like if you don't have those things, then you are, you know, you're primitive, you're savage, you know, you live...
Or at least you're
poor.
At least less than us, you know.
You're poor, you can't have it. And so, not necessarily thinking like, well, maybe these people don't want to have it.
Mm-hmm.
You know? Don't want to have those things and their way of life doesn't have to mirror ours, you know. And one is not better than the other.
Well, but the stereotype comes from a position of you know, believing in a hierarchy, believing that we are the standard and everybody else is not doing as good as us. You know, look at Latin America and, you know, all these different types of things. I mean, it's very pernicious. This
pernicious.
This propaganda and this.
What does pernicious mean?
It just means like infiltrative and like bad, you know. It's like it has a bad spread. It has you know, it negatively affects multiple things. I think. Should we define pernicious?
Let's define pernicious. You know, I'm never afraid to define a word, even if I think I know what it means.
Pernicious, having a harmful effect, especially in a gradual or subtle way.
There you go.
The pernicious effects of air pollution is a sentence.
You used it perfectly then.
Well, I'm acquainted with the word, you know. I know the word.
You've seen it several times.
And I've used it before.
Well, how do you learn words? Do you tend to learn words that you have to see them multiple times to know them?
Yeah. I won't use a word, you know, that I just heard. I have to have heard it many times. I have to, you know, have heard it in context many times. Then I'll start using it, you know, once I have a good grasp of it.
We're very different in that regard. I find a new word, I want to use it right away.
Well, I mean, because you're actively, you know, doing the synapse sort of connections right then and there.
No.
Yeah, sometimes you do. Sometimes you do, and you'll look it up right away, and you're like, okay, I wanna practice this one today. I want to use this. You know.
Figure out how do I get this into my sentence.
Exactly. And me, I'm just more of a lazy about it. Like,
passive learner.
Passive learner. You know, the passive learner, exactly.
And for vocabulary, you're a very active learner for a lot of other things.
For other things, sure, yeah. But I've been better at that with the vocabulary too, because I've been, you know, these last few months, the last few weeks, I've been most...
You've been using a lot of, you've been using a lot of new words.
I've been searching up.
You know what I'm a passive learner at? My times tables. One day I think that I will finally know them. But sort of like sometimes I just, you know, get a multiplication.
You're very late on this. Very late on this. We covered this in the 2nd, 3rd grade.
I know exactly what happened. I was gone. I was out sick.
We go over
and I remember
all year
people,
long. It's not a
one-day
lesson.
I remember because can you imagine I was distressed about this. I was distressed that everybody seemed to be, they were ahead. No, I wasn't out sick. I know what happened. I was switching schools. Mm-hmm. And so there was a period where I wasn't in school because we were doing a transition because we were moving. And so I come into the class, I'm just brand new and they're already doing fucking the multiplication table. And they're already deep into it. They know the 6s, they know the 7s.
horrible.
And I just fell behind. I had to catch up quick, and it was my fault. I was late in the year.
It wasn't your fault. I mean, you're not the one that moved yourself, and it was the circumstance.
Yeah, I don't mean like it's my fault, but that's just how it was. Like
that's how it happened. That goes to something very important, which is, education and the importance of gaps in education for somebody young
can have a big impact.
Have a very big impact, especially when you're measured up against your peers. We live in a very competitive society. This wage society is very competitive on purpose, And so to be set back like that is something...
It might seem minor, but, it can
affect.
Yeah.
And, that's why COVID on education, on public education was huge. That's another bullet point in the degradation of U.S. public education right there.
Well, I've seen, a lot of teachers lament, that their students don't know what they need to know, like they're not at the level
I know
that they should be. And it's very sad, actually.
Yes.
It's like, you're in middle school and you lack, a very basic sense of reading comprehension.
Even in high school, even in adult age,
It's amazing. I mean, but I think that, teachers can't do it alone. That's just my feeling. I know maybe other people don't agree with that, but teachers can't do it alone. It shouldn't be just the teacher's job to teach the child,
I agree with that.
The parent should be encouraging things that help the child learn.
Sure.
Not that the parent has to teach them the materials themselves, but encouraging things that would help a child develop different, educational skills, like encouraging reading or, I don't know.
Supplemental learning as well in the home, You don't also have to cover the exact same things. Some things and a lot of things are left out of the curriculum if you introduce other things.
Yeah, you can even do it in the media that you watch. Like you could say,
Sure.
"Oh, let's watch this science documentary thing," or let's watch this historical thing. And people learn through that too. That's a way of passive learning.
Yeah. Learning in many different ways is very important. And
through your actions too, you teach your kid about what's healthy eating. I mean, you had a sort of basic concept yourself just naturally. And I'm not saying teach a child you can explain, but even something as having your kid eat the right things, it shows to the kid, well, this is like a normal thing to eat. This is the type of thing that people eat, that we all eat, my family eats, Take a child where everybody just eats, junk food and TV dinners, they're going to see that as something that's normal. Likely everybody eats like I do and my family does.
Yeah. Sure, exactly.
And you teach that way, that's a passive learning. But it can be in a good way or it can be in
Humans, the brain is always active.
It's always active.
As long as you're alive, the brain is active. So
you're always learning.
It's kind of like you're always intaking. That's for sure. You're always intaking.
Sure.
And so learning is something. Yeah, you're learning passively, and you're getting coded. You're programming yourself. And the environment is programming you, and others are programming.
You're updating,
Constantly.
Daily updates.
And so that's
software update.
And that's why I like the terms of coding, decoding, programming, deprogramming. I don't necessarily like when people use the terms radicalizing, radicalization, and de-radicalization. That tends to be the vocabulary of oppressors. It's kind of vague, and it's been used as a wide net.
Yeah.
Oh, decoding and coding, yeah. But they would use those too. They would use those too. It's just they don't use those that much, but that's just because they haven't written those into the laws yet. But can I tell you one more thing?
Yeah.
So Trump, about 7 days ago, something like that, he passed a SMPM7. It's a national something memorandum. It's some memorandum.
He was really busy up in that office.
He wasn't. He didn't write it. I read it. I read the whole thing. He did not write it. He probably had Stephen Miller write it or somebody else write it.
No, I didn't mean it, but he's writing the laws. He's signing off on them.
No, I know, but this wasn't necessarily like a law. It was just like a memorandum. It's a way to set the focus, set the table, set the focus for all the executive powers to run with this playbook. And the playbook...
Like, this is what we should all be doing.
Yes.
But executive power meaning the president, or is it like that?
Yeah, I mean,
just
he's the one that set the memorandum.
Executive is just one person, the president?
No. The executive branch is big. The DTA, the CIA. The executive branch is what executes the laws. The ones that execute different things. The Congress is the legislative. They write. They set the table.
So they wrote this memorandum for Trump.
No. This is an executive memorandum.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
And what does it say? What does the SMP 7114 say?
That's a good question. Let me tell you right now. It's big stuff. It's big stuff. Okay, so and who's doing a lot of good journalism on the the NSPM 7? Ken Klippenstein, okay? He's doing some really good stuff here. So it's a national security directive, okay, that Trump initiated about a week ago. But the mainstream media hasn't been talking about it a lot, okay? But look, it's a national security presidential memorandum, okay, countering domestic terrorism, where it depicts, let's see here, Trump has signed a little notice, blah, 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 identifying anti-Christian, so church and state linked. Forget about church and state, separation of church and state. Identifying anti-Christian, anti-American, so broad, anti-American, very broad, views as indicators of radical left violence, equating being anti-Christian and anti-American with the beginnings of violence.
So someone expressed that, like, I don't like Christianity is what. Mm-hmm. It's radical left violence.
Yes.
And so what can happen if you do some radical left violence?
Well, look.
But why specify left?
Because this is highly political. And then they are on the right. They are fascists. So what they're trying to do is equate, look at this, Antifa, anti-fascist. Antifa means anti-fascist. Okay, it's not an organization. Mm-hmm. People are anti-fascist because fascism is very damaging to society, very violent, very anti-democracy. Yeah. Very anti-free speech and anti-freedom and anti-some American values, being American.
Yeah.
Is almost to, some people believe historically that we are historically anti-fascist. We fought the Nazis. They were fascists. Our history is full of being anti-fascist. But because they are fascists, they have to combat the anti-fascism. Because they're fascism. They want to stay in power. So this NSPM is a directive trying to tell Homeland Security and the different arms of the executive branch and the state that we need to focus on this more. FBI, open up new departments, open up new cases. We have to look into people who that fall into this wide web of Antifa, anti-fascist, anti-Christian, anti-American, other things. So look, Some people call it an executive
Over 200
order.
executive orders.
That's what Trump has done, but this wasn't an executive order. He's trying to say that they're misconstruing it as an executive order, whereas a national security directive is a sweeping policy decree for the defense, foreign policy, intelligence, and law enforcement apparatus. National security directives are often secret, but in this case, the Trump administration chose to publish only the 7th since he's come into office. This is the only the 7th since he's come.
Well, at least he didn't want to keep it secret.
Sure, but it's almost scarier this way. Okay, so look, previous national security directives have been controversial, even politically earth-shaking. In 1980, for example, President Jimmy Carter signed the top-secret Presidential Directive 59, directing new nuclear warfighting policies that persisted until the end of the Cold War. When revealed, PD 59 caused a public furor. I'm reading from an article, so I'm going to have to link this in the show notes. But similarly, and this one is one that we're more familiar with, or we should be. Similarly, President George W. Bush signed a series of classified national security directives after 9/11, the most famous of which authorized NSA's unlawful domestic intercepts, a directive that wasn't publicly revealed until 4 years later. So this is when the NSA was spying on the American public and creating terrorism task force and imprisoning and using this. There's a lot of Americans that we haven't heard from, and it's just not talked about, but they got caught in these traps. And I'm not saying that everybody that they catch is a good person, sometimes using these directives and policies, but sometimes they do make these are political things that are happening. They're choosing a side to defend, and it's not classic American values that are in the Constitution. It's unconstitutional sort of missions and plans and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
The NSPM 7 directs a new national strategy to disrupt any individual or groups that foment political violence, including before they result in violent political acts. In other words, they're targeting pre-crime, to reference Minority Report. So the Trump administration isn't only targeting organizations or groups, but even individuals and entities whom the directive says can be identified by any of the following indicators of violence: anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, anti-Christianity, support for the overthrow of the United States government, extremism on migration, extremism on race, extremism on gender, hostility towards those who hold traditional American values on family, religion, and morality.
There's a lot of things on the list.
There's a lot of things on the list. There's a lot of Americans on this list, or they can find themselves on this list. I just, these things are just, this, I'm sure your mom didn't see this in CNN today,
No.
I'm sure that you haven't heard about this before.
I've never heard about it before.
And it's the highly political among us that are tuned into this, and even then, I'm not out on the street right now. There's a lot of apathy. So it's just and a lot of ignorance and a lot of intentional hiding of what's happening, and it's good to know. It's good to know. That's why I wanted to mention it on a podcast, because and I'm gonna give you the last word.
Well, I'm not really sure what kind of closing statement I can give to this movie.
What are your thoughts? Are you
thoughts,
scared? Is this too much?
It is very scary. It seems like it's a very, broad brush, and sort of anybody can fall into that, at the whim of the executive branch.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, but all the other people that are fighting for change, for other people, those people, this is, can completely stop their movements. It's not, they no longer have free speech.
And that's why they go on after the left first,
I know, but they didn't really want free speech, these people.
They don't believe in free speech. This is anti-free speech, Okay, let's go here.
Para no hacer de mí con pedazos, para salvarme entre únicos e impares, para cederme un lugar en su parnaso, para darme un iconcito en sus altares. Me vienen a convidar a arrepentirme, me vienen a convidar a que no pierda. Vienen a convidar en definirme, me vienen a convidar a tanta mierda. Yo no sé lo que es el destino, caminando fui lo que fui. Haya Dios que será divino, yo me muero como viví. Yo me muero como viví. Yo me muero como viví. Yo quiero seguir jugando a lo perdido. Yo quiero ser a la zurda más que diestro. Yo quiero hacer un congreso del unido. Yo quiero rezar a fondo un hijo nuestro. Dirán que pasó de moda la locura. Dirán que la gente es mala y no merece. Yo partiré soñando travesuras. ¿Acaso multiplicar panes y peces? Yo no sé lo que es el destino. Caminando fui lo que fui. Haya Dios que será divino. Yo me muero como viví. Yo me muero como viví. Yo me muero como viví. Como viví, como viví. Yo me muero como viví, como viví. Yo me muero como viví. Dicen que me arrastrarán por sobre rocas cuando la revolución se venga abajo, que machacarán mis manos y mi boca, que me arrancarán los ojos y el badajo. ¿Será que la necedad parió conmigo? La necedad de lo que hoy resulta necio, la necesidad de asumir al enemigo, la necesidad de vivir sin tener precio. Yo no sé lo que es el destino, caminando fui lo que fui. Haya Dios que será divino, yo me muero como